Nathan Bolt, artist here at Emergent Game Technologies, and in this video we're going to go ahead and take an existing character using just native materials inside of Maya and get that moved over to a Gamebryo material so it renders in Gamebryo. So I've got my character here rendering inside of Maya. By the way, this is the Ironclad from the tabletop miniatures game War Machine by Privateer Press, and he's used with permission from them. So let's go ahead and take a look at what we got here. This character, he's got kind of a complex material. You can see we've got a base map applied to him. We've got some specular highlights on there. He's got an environment map, and also these guys are supposed to be steam powered, so we've got these little a glow map applied to some of these vents to show burning coals in there. So let's go ahead and take a look at the material I've got applied to this guy. I'm using a Fong material for him, and as we walk through this, you can see that we've got a color map applied. He's got the glow map here, normal map, and then I've got textures for each of the specular components. We got cosine power, the fall off, specular color, reflectivity, and reflected color. And for the reflected color, we're just using a flat sphere map as opposed to like a cube map, but you could use either. Alright, so if you go ahead and open up your Gamebryo shelf up here, the fourth button in from the left is this little computer with a deviled egg on it. Go ahead and click that, and that will launch Asset Viewer with a quick export, so you can just see what your object's going to look like by default in Gamebryo. And you can see if we just export the way we had it, all we're going to get is the base map. This doesn't look right. Some other quick things to point out about this. By default in Asset Viewer, there's two default lights from opposite directions. One of them is kind of up in the top left, the other one's down in the bottom right hand corner. Just so you know, if you've got a normal map on there and you're trying to figure out where lighting is coming from, it's useful to know. So anyway, it didn't grab any of our other textures because we're just using a Fong material. If we want to get the whole thing over there, what we need to do is get this transferred over to use Gamebryo material. So if you've got your material panel open, you can see you can just go ahead and create a new NiMultiShader. In this case, what I'm going to do is just go ahead and change the type to an NiMultiShader, and it'll go ahead and convert everything over. And by default, the only one it's going to grab is the color map. You also notice I had high quality render turned on. The Gamebryo material does not work in high quality render, so let's go ahead and switch that back to default. Now you can see it's horribly downsampling my texture. It does that for performance reasons by default. If you just want to see one texture at a time at full resolution, when you have your material selected over here under performance, just click single map only, and then it'll default to base map. If you've got other textures applied, you can just pull this down and look at any of those that you want to. So under the NiMultiShader, we have first our material options. You got your diffuse, specular, ambient. These should all look pretty familiar. Emittances, glow. These are all just flat colors. And then shineness. Shineness would be similar to your fall off or cosine power in a Fong, and it just takes a single number. It looks like you could put a texture input on here, but that's just a default Maya UI thing. It's not actually going to grab that on export. So let's go ahead and pull that up to 85, and let's start putting some of our textures back on here. So the first one I'm going to put on here is the normal map. Let me go ahead and apply that. Alright, and then let's go ahead and take a look at this now with the normal map and specular turned on in Asset Viewer. So you'll notice now we get per pixel highlights on specularity from the normal map. But as you look at the normal map, like up here, there's that kind of ugly seam there. Normals look really wrong back here, especially when you look at these dials. Those are supposed to look like they're flat and recessed. So there's something going wrong with the normal map here. And what's happening is when textures get exported from Maya, they get flipped upside down because Gamebryo starts from the top left corner for UVs, but Maya starts at the bottom left. And so what's happening is it's inverting your green channel on the normal map if you generated it from Maya by default, which I did. So there's two things you can do. One is you can just take your normal map back into Photoshop wherever and invert the green channel yourself there. But if you don't want to do that, another option you have is up here at the top under material there's a geometry rollout, and you can just change your normal by normal tangent frame to match what's in Maya by default. So we'll just go ahead and pull that down, set it to Maya. Let's do another quick export, and we'll see when this comes up. Now we're not getting that ugly seam there. These are actually rendering properly. We don't get any kind of funkiness along that. So if you generate your normal maps in Maya, just make sure to go ahead and set your geometry to Maya NBT frames. So now we've got a normal map applied. I also had an incandescence or a glow map on here. So if we go here under material textures, we'll see a glow map slot. So let's go ahead and apply that to this guy as well. There he is. Alright, now something else I'm going to point out about this texture. This guy only glows in a few different spots, like on his eyes and his face mask slots up here and then on the back. So I used a different UV set, so I could use a smaller texture, not lose any resolution. If you have multiple UV sets, the way you can assign textures to those is go ahead and select your mesh and select the material from there. So let me go ahead and scroll over to that. When you have a single mesh selected with an NiMultiShader applied, under any of these textures you'll see UV set. and that shows up with a drop down which will display any of the UV sets you have applied to that mesh. If you don't have a mesh selected and just select the material directly, this will be grayed out. So we've got glow map. Let's go ahead and switch that over to glow. Take a look at it in asset viewer, and you'll see now we have a nice little glow applied on the face mask, eyes, and then back here, just to give it a little punch. So the next thing I'm going to apply is his specular map. Now Gamebryo, unlike the Maya default shader, so Maya had specular color and fall off and reflectivity all as separate textures. Fall off is just driven through this one number, but reflectivity and specular color are all going to be driven by a single texture, which is called your gloss map. And what's going to do when it determines the brightness of a specular color or the texture coordinate it should be using from your environment map, it's going to multiply both of those by your gloss map. So if your gloss map is pure yellow, you're just going to get yellow specular highlights, and any reflection it gets on that is just going to show up as yellow. So because I had two textures, I had to take these back into Photoshop and do a little bit of editing in there to get it to work properly. So let's go ahead and apply that now. We'll take a look at him, and you'll notice now when I load this guy up, we're getting some kind of subtle yellow highlights on these brassy parts. We get some soft white highlights on some of the steel parts, like right in through here, but the blue painted parts were really dark in the gloss map, so those don't really get specular highlights. So the last thing we need to do before I can move this guy over fully to the material is the last thing he had was a reflection map, which in the Gamebryo plugin for Maya, that's not done through the material, but instead we do that with a light. So let's go ahead, up on your Gamebryo shelf, a little ways in is this shiny little ball, create dynamic texture light. Go ahead and click that, and that'll just create a normal spotlight. And then on the color channel of that, we'll go ahead and apply the texture we're using. And in this case, as I said, it's just a flat image. I'm not using a cube map, so we just go ahead and put that on there. So then you need to go ahead and select the light, and under the transform node, all the way to the left, there's Gamebryo options rollout, and we're going to open that up, and under texture type we're going to switch that to environment map, and coordinate type will change to sphere map. If you had a cube map instead, you could go ahead and set it to specular cube map. So now let's go ahead and load this guy up in asset viewer, and you can see now we have all the different options. We've got reflections going on, especially like in these brassy parts, and you can see it back here on his boiler. We're getting nice reflections there. You get some specular highlights, and we get our glow map. So now this guy is ready to render in Gamebryo.